Before we talk about this story, as I pass it out, I want you to think about something that you wonder about this story, just based on your understanding of the knowledge before you read it. So look at the title. Don't start reading yet, just because I'm passing out your paper. I want you to just think, what do you think the story might be about? Yes, Cassie, go ahead and tell me what you think. Okay, so you think the story is going to definitely be about a skull, okay? Okay. What is something that we wonder about? Brian. Okay, so you're wondering what the skull is going to do in the story. Very good, good job. All right, so I'm going to read this story to you. You are going to follow along with me as I read, okay? So I want you to look at your paper, follow along with me as I read, because I may call on you to read if you're not paying attention. Once a man was walking down the road toward his village. He was not paying attention to anything around him. This man considered himself a scholar of life. He was always deep in thought. He liked to think about important things. He did not put his mind to ordinary problems. If it wasn't impossible, or at least very complicated, he didn't care about it at all. This man spent all day looking out over the ocean, and he only noticed the things he thought were useful. He didn't notice the beauty of the ocean. The only things he considered were sharks and shipwrecks. He didn't notice the clear blue sky. He was thinking about all the storms that must have been churning far away. He did not notice the wonderful songs of the birds. He only thought about how many of their nests had been robbed. He didn't notice the playful animals swinging through the branches or rustling in the grass. He only wondered whether or not the great cats were on the prowl. That was the kind of man he was. As he walked back toward the village that day, he happened to pass a pile of bones. They were bleached white, and they gleamed in the bright sun. He stopped and stared down at them. He was the sort of man who would stop to stare down at a pile of bones. The skull on the pile was resting above all the other bones, and it seemed to be watching the man just as intently as he was watching it. The man reached out and picked up the skull. He held it in one way and then another. He looked gravely into the empty eye sockets and said, "What brought you here, brother?" "Talking," the skull replied, without much interest. The man was so shocked. He dropped the skull and jumped back. He watched the skull for a few minutes before he managed to stammer out, "You can talk?" "Yes," said the skull. "Talking is very easy. All you have to do is open up your mouth and out it comes. Talking is easy. Finding something worthwhile to say is not." The man was amazed. He had never seen a talking skull before, let alone one that could spout such wisdom. "I must take you to the village," the man exclaimed. He scooped up the skull and ran as fast as he could. The villagers saw him coming, and a great many of them ran for their homes. You see, he was the kind of man who was always getting busy people into useless conversations when there was work to be done. He never seemed to be quiet, and he never spoke about anything anyone ever wanted to hear. As he entered the village, he called out to his neighbors, "Come quickly. I have something wonderful to show you." No one came. The man was so excited that he did not even realize that the few people in sight were moving away from him. "Put down whatever you are doing, everyone. I have a marvelous mystery to show all of you, the likes of which you have never before seen." When the man said the word mystery, you can be sure he got the attention of some villagers. They started poking their heads out of their houses. Women left their yams cooking. Men put down their digging sticks, and children stopped their playing. They all began to gather around the man. Angela, please read. Okay, Angela, keep reading. Finish at a digging stick. Very good. All right, continue to follow along. Somebody get the chief, said an old man holding his grandson's hand. There was so much commotion. The chief came to see what was happening. What is going on? The chief roared. He was a very orderly chief, and he did not like all this yelling and brandishing of gardening tools in the middle of the village. All the people were silent except for one villager. He stood up and pointed to the man with the skull. This man told us he had something to show us. Then he pulled out that awful skull. We thought he was trying to call the dark spirits to the village. We were trying to stop him. Oh, said the chief, eyeing the man with the skull. And were you going to call dark spirits to my village? Certainly not, the scholar declared. Glad the chief was there. He was sure the chief would understand with this intellectual matter. Then what were you doing? The chief asked with curiosity. Well, the man said in a pompous voice, I was on my way home from the ocean when I came across a pile of bones. On top of the heap was this skull. It spoke to me. I brought it here to share this wonder with the village. The chief did not look convinced. I'll show you, the man said, raising the skull so that it looked at the chief. Say something to the chief, he commanded. The skull said nothing. The chief frowned. Speak, the man said, I command you. The skull remained silent. One of the children laughed. Speak, he said, you must speak. The man started getting nervous. The skull said nothing. The man begged and pleaded with the skull. The skull remained silent. The people began to get angry again, and the chief got angry right along with them. You are always a troublemaker in my village, and now you come here with this nonsense. The chief and the people had enough. They took the skull from the man, found the mound of bones he had taken it from, and put it back there. That very day, the villagers had held a meeting with the chief and decided to throw the man out of their village. They watched him collect his few belongings and said to him, Since you found that skull so much company, why don't you go live with it? The man stormed out of the village and down the road to the pile of bones. He picked up the skull. Before he could get one word out of his mouth, the skull said, Sorry about that. What? Now you talk? That is not going to do me much good. Why didn't you say something back in the village? I told you, the skull replied. It's easy to talk. It is not always easy to find something worthwhile to say. You are absolutely unpleasant, the man screamed. I don't know what trouble you caused that brought you to this sorry state, but you deserve everything you got. I already told you what got me in trouble, the skull replied. Talking, same as you. Okay, before we talk about this story, we're going to go over a few vocabulary words. So our first word is marvelous. It is a what? Adjective, very good. It means causing great wonder. And let's read this sentence together. I had a marvelous time at the circus with my family. The next vocab word is commotion. What part of speech is it? A noun, very good. And it means a state of confused and noisy disturbance. Read this sentence with me. As the hurricane grew and got closer to the shore, it caused a commotion. Very good. The next word is brandish. This is a word we probably haven't heard before. What part of speech is it? A verb, very good. Brandish means to wave something in a threatening or angry way. So read this sentence with me. The soldier waved his sword very brandish at his enemy. Think of when you play Fortnite. You wave your axe very brandishly. Okay? Think about that. The next word is pompous. Think of the king or the leader of the town. He was pompous. This word is an adjective. It means irritatingly self-important, arrogant. The king walked pompously in front of his subjects. The next word is stammer, which is a verb. It means to speak with sudden pauses and a tendency to repeat letters or words. When you're nervous, you stammer, okay? The boy stammered through his words as he told his teacher what was the matter. The last vocabulary word is gravely. It's an adverb. It means in a serious manner. The guard nodded gravely at the prisoner. All right, let's discuss the book, or the story, okay? All right, so your first question that you have is, what do you think this man does for a living? Raise your hand and tell me, what do you think this man does for a living? Jason. You think he's a teacher, okay? You're pretty correct. He is a philosopher, okay? He's a thinker. He thinks about things, okay? So we know that the man is a philosopher. Very good, okay? The next question is, why do you think the man talked to the skull when he knew that it wasn't supposed to talk back? Angela. Right. So when the man talked to the skull, he stumbled upon the skull. So have you ever been walking somewhere and you see something that doesn't belong there and you actually talk to it? Have any of you ever done that? I have. Okay? You ask yourself, well, what are you doing here? So he stops and talks to it. But another thing we have to consider is this man a good man? No, he gets in trouble a lot. He has a lot of confrontation with people in the village. So he's the type of guy that would do something like this, correct? Right, so yes, he stammers upon it and it shocks him to see it, but he's also the type of guy that would talk to a skull, okay? All right, the third question is, why do you think the villagers ran from the man? Brian, why do you think the villagers ran from the man? Correct. So they ran from him because they didn't like him. And why is that? Angela. Right. They did not like him because he caused problems. He annoyed them whenever they didn't want to talk to him. And he liked to cause problems. He liked to lie about things from what we can tell. Correct? Good job. Okay. So we know that the man is a liar. He gets into trouble. Okay. All right. The next question is, what do you think the skull means by it's easy to talk? It's not always easy to find something worthwhile to say. That's a little bit complicated to think about. It's easy to talk. It's not always easy to find something worthwhile to say. Okay, think about this. Has your mom ever told you, think about your words before you say them? Yeah, my mom told me to say that plenty of times, especially when I was younger. So what your mom is saying, she's saying for you to think about your thoughts before you say them out loud, because your words could what? Hurt. That's right. So this man, is he going to hurt people? In a way, yeah, he is, because he is a liar and his whole town knows that. But what we have to learn is that even though he is a liar, he's confronted by this skull, and this skull is tempting him by talking to him, okay? So the skull is teaching him the lesson of to think about his words before he says them. Does that make sense? Good. All right. The next thing that we're going to do is you're going to work on your text-dependent questions on your Google Classroom. So go ahead and get on Google Classroom. You're going to answer each of these 3 questions. Make sure you give details from the text. That means cite your source, okay? What do we put around our source when we cite it? Quotation marks. Good job. So make sure you do that. Go ahead and get started. All right, let's wrap up our lesson. Okay, so we're going to do a debrief discussion real quick. Okay, so after reading this short story, when do you think it's more important to talk and when do you think it's more important to listen? Somebody give me an example of when it's more important to talk. Brian? Right, very good. So it's more important to talk when somebody is hurting, okay? When you're sticking up for somebody, that's when it's more important to talk. Or when you really what? Angela, when you really know what you're talking about, right? Okay, good job. What about, when is it more important to listen? Jason, when is it more important to listen? Good job, right. So when we don't know something, we don't want to seem like a know-it-all and start talking about it, right? We want to listen to what others have to say. Now, some of you may know more about some topics than I do, but I know more about some topics than you do. So when I'm up here, what is it your job to do? Listen, right? Okay, so it's important for you to listen while I'm teaching. And sometimes I have to listen to you when you're telling me information, right? Good job. All right, in this short story, the man learns that it's better not to speak than to say something unimportant. How do you decide whether or not to say something at a specific time? Raise your hand if you can give me an example of that. Angela. That's a great example. Good job. So what Angela said is she said that sometimes she has a friend that is talking about her problems at home and how she's having problems at home. Well, Angela said that she doesn't come from a family that has problems. So all that Angela can do is she can comfort her friend during that time. She's not going to speak about the person's problems because she doesn't identify with them. But she can be a good friend and listen to the problems. Good job, Angela. Okay. All right. How do you determine how your words will affect others? How do you determine how your words will affect others? Raise your hand and give me an example. Armando, raise your hand and give me an example of how your words can affect others. That's a very good example, Armando. Good job. So what Armando said is he says that sometimes the words that he says to his siblings hurt them, and sometimes what his siblings say to him hurts him. So sometimes he has to think about what his words mean to other people and how he should approach conversations. That's a great example, Armando. All right, I'm going to come around. I'm going to hand you a little piece of paper. These are the ones that we use when we do our written responses. You're going to write your written response on it, and you're going to turn it into the basket when you are done. Okay, you can